NBA, Anthony Edwards blocks Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's go-ahead shot attempt, capping a 25-point second-half comeback as the Timberwolves beat the Thunder in OT. SG had 39 and a near triple-double. Shai also missed a three-pointer with 2.9 seconds left in that extra period that would have tied the score. The Wolves pulled off the fourth-largest fourth-quarter comeback in the play-by-play era. Before last night, teams trailing by 24-plus in the fourth had lost 1,552 straight games. I call that no quit. Here's Ant and an excited Wolves team with more.
One game at a time. That's all it is. Focus on the next one. We got this one done. Road trip.
Boys, hey, all I got, them boys keep playing like that, man. We're going to be hard to beat, man.
I don't got nothing. Beat LA, that's all.
You got to love the new blood we're seeing, right? And SGA. SA, was this epic comeback more about Minnesota or OKC?
I think it was more about, for me personally, I was going to say it was more about OKC until I realized that Holmgren was rested for the game, and Hartenstein went down in the second quarter. All right, so he went down in the second quarter, and then obviously your two bigs are out of the game. So I've got to really change my position in that regard and look at the Minnesota Timberwolves and say, wait a minute here. You know what? Even though that happened, they scored 254 points in these back-to-back games against a top-rated defense in OKC. I can't ignore that. You got cats like Naz Reid and Jaden Daniels doing what they do. I can't ignore that. I'm looking at Anthony Edwards. You got 2 points. Minnesota scored 2 points. I'm sorry, they scored 51 points in the fourth quarter and overtime. 2 of those points were scored by Anthony Edwards, who had a lower leg injury and sat out most of the fourth quarter when they came back on OKC. So I'm looking at it from that standpoint, and I'm saying, wait a minute, Rudy Gobert didn't play. Julius Randle's been out the last month or so with his groin injury. And you had these other brothers stepping up and making a contribution. I know my original answer was going to be OKC, but I didn't know those details until a little while ago. And I said to myself, I got reminded of that. I said, I got to look at Minnesota a little bit differently, too.
Shai?
I agree with you, Stephen A. This was all about Minnesota. When you can get a 25, 24, whatever point come from behind victory, and your best player doesn't really play in the fourth quarter and only had 2 points. He only had 17 points in the entirety of the game. And you heard him mention in that soundbite, if these guys play like this, we're going to be tough to beat. And that's what you can look. OKC had a bad night, had a big lead, let it get away from them, all that. I get it. I get all of that. But in order for you mean to tell me you got outscored, what, 41-19 in the fourth quarter? And as Legs was telling us yesterday, they have a very good defense. We know they got offense. Shai Gilgeous, Jalen Williams. They got Chet just come back. But this was all about Minnesota. Minnesota dug down. And we see this from time to time. We've seen this a lot. Cleveland came from behind, I think, in the playoffs with Kyrie and Kevin Love on the bench. And a lot of times people are afraid to keep their stars out when the team start to gain momentum, concerned about how he's going to feel, Legs. But Minnesota rode that hot wave. Ant-Man really didn't play a whole lot. And he only had 2 points in the fourth, I think the fourth in overtime. This was about Minnesota. This wasn't about OKC. OKC had a bad night, but Minnesota dug deep, and they found a way to scratch this victory out.
I'm going to take a different approach on this. Look, I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to give you guys, some support in this regard. First thing you have to do, you're down 20 on the road on a back-to-back, is just keep playing. So give Minnesota credit. They kept playing, even down 16 with 3:40 to go. A lot of coaches in the league, second night of back-to-back, you're not having anybody in the game in your starting lineup. They kept playing, and they made an adjustment on Shai in the fourth quarter. They went to this 2-2-1, really extended zone. And those top two guys were Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and they were trapping Shai near half court, making him give it up. So that adjustment, I'll give Minnesota credit. But, guys, this to me was more about just an epic failure on the part of OKC. They gave up 14 free throw attempts in the fourth quarter, and they gave up 8 more in overtime. 22 free throws in the last 17 minutes of the game. And a lot of those were just silly, careless fouls where you're allowing Minnesota to score. The clock is not moving. You're allowing them to set up this defense that was being very effective. So I thought Oklahoma City defensively, that was probably one of the worst stretches of the year you're going to see out of the top-rated defense. It's inexcusable the way that they closed that game. That's one thing. And then on the other end, their wheelhouse is not taking early threes in the first 12 seconds of the clock. They took a lot of them. Now, look, Minnesota's defense was forcing it out of Shai's hands, so it led to some of that. That doesn't mean you have to take those shots on the wing if you're a role player that shoots 35% from the three-point line. That's what they wanted you to do, and you bought right into it. They took their foot off the gas a little bit. They got sloppy defensively with all the fouling. It allowed this to happen. It's inexcusable. And I think, actually, this might be the best thing to happen to Oklahoma City because they're going to say, this is a lesson, man. You can't let this happen to yourself at home.
That's not what I'm taking from what you're saying, Tim Legler.
Uh-oh.
I think you're leaving a little something out. Is it possible, Tim Legler? Shannon Sharp, I want you to listen to what I'm about to throw in Leg's direction. Is it possible, Tim Legler, that based off of what you saw last night, you knowing basketball the way that you do, you being reminded of what happened to them last year in the playoffs, you being reminded of the fact that, when you get the ball out of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's hands, is there somebody, regardless of the enormous amount of talent they have on that squad, is there somebody that you can trust that will step up when it counts to deliver the goods? Is it possible, Tim Legler, that you're questioning that about OKC now, knowing Luka and LeBron, Jokic, and others are going to be in the postseason waiting to go up against them? Is it possible that OKC has diminished your level of confidence in them based on what you saw last night?
Listen.
Say it.
I'm not going to deny. I'm not going to deny. I'm sitting up in the hotel room here up in Seaport watching the game, nice and comfortable, and I'm thinking, wow, this is impressive performance by OKC. And then all this nonsense plays out on their part. I'm not going to lie. I did sit there and go, man, it's a bad look. You can't let this happen. You got taken to the wire the night before by this team. Now you go home, you build this big lead, one of the most dominant home court advantages in the league, the #1 defense in the league. And that's not just analytics. That's my eyeballs telling me what I've seen all year. This is the best defensive team in the NBA. Can't let it happen. So I'm not going to lie. Yes, I said this is a bad look for you. And this is going to raise now the conversation. And you know who I thought about? I swear I sat there and I thought about Shannon. I thought about Shannon because I'm saying Shannon is going to look at this and say, there you go. This is the one we're looking. You talked yesterday about the door being closed. Doors closed in the Yes. Now the doors are right. It's stuff like this that lends itself to it. And I can't really defend it because it's an ugly loss. There's no other way to describe that, man. You're the best team in the Western Conference. You cannot lose that lead, particularly when Anthony Edwards has basically been taken to the bench for the rest of the night. Now, he came in and made one of the great defensive plays I've seen all year to help save that game.
Reminiscent of what he did against Indiana. Not quite, but it was reminiscent of what he did against Indiana last year.
But offensively, he basically was a non-factor. And they still were able to get it done. So, look, anybody that wants to make this a larger picture about OKC, it's hard to defend that. It really is. So I hear where people are coming from. I personally am going with the larger body work I've seen all year out of this team.
What I tried to tell you is Leg. Stephen A. Remember he told the door was closed.
Yeah.
But he didn't know Luka and LeBron got master keys. There's not a door they can't open. Because you know who I got? I got two custodians that head, and they got the master key. Got a bunch of keys on there, but they do have two master keys that can open any door in the NBA. Look, I get what you're saying, Legs, but you have to understand. Look how they got that lead. Playing fast, taking those shots. Those shots were falling early. The thing is, a lot of times you see teams, well, hey, it's a make or miss lead. Oh, that was a good shot. That was a good shot. And they keep taking those same shots, a la the Atlanta Falcons, Stephen A. against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Well, we threw to get this lead. Well, forget sitting on a 25-point lead and trying to run it. Let's go ahead and try and bury them. And, the things that make you laugh, make you cry. But give Minnesota, like you said, if a team missed that many shots, somebody has to make that many shots because if we're both missing, nothing changes. Yeah, they started missing, but Minnesota caught fire. And the next thing you know, I'm looking at 341. I was like, well, this one's over. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Minnesota actually won this game with 3:41 left in the ball game, down 16. They won on the road. That's all Minnesota.
One other thing to pay
how you like us now?
There we go. One other thing to pay attention to with OKC. Only 3 teams have multiple wins against them this season. The Mavericks, the Warriors, and the Timberwolves.
Interesting.
Something to pay attention to.
Yeah, I want to ask you this. Would you rather build